going to say I'm the guy who's incredibly has a slower internet connection. And I'm saying, hey, I'm at this position, guys. I'm at the house right now. And I give you a ping of 300 milliseconds. So a ping is basically the time it takes for this packet to reach the server and from here to the other person. So this guy communicates to the server at 120 milliseconds, right? So I say I'm at this position. So as when this packet reaches this guy, right, it will be around 420 milliseconds. That's less than a second. So when you're considering shooting in a fast-paced game, right, if I'm trying to shoot you in the head, this guy is not even in that position when I'm actually shooting them. He must have already moved to a different position. So latency plays a huge part in a P2P network because nobody knows who is in the right position at what given time. And internet is not perfect. Everybody is going to get connected at different speeds to the server, right? So this is one of the hurdles in P2P. They usually compensate this issue with something called lag compensation. So network is not perfect. Everybody is slow, right? So what we do is basically calculate the position of this player. This is the position that I got. So I'm saying at 300 milliseconds, I got this position. So I know for a fact this packet of information took me 300 milliseconds to reach from the server. So what I'll do is, okay, I'll do a projection. I'll say this vector is going to move from this position to this position in this given time. So I sort of multiply his position with the delay of the information that I got to give an approximation of where the player would have been, right? So that's exactly what I'm doing. So, but lag compensation has this other issue saying if I apply the same information here, right? So I'm going to draw the player here, even though the packet I received, the player was here. So I calculate the position with the forward vector of 300 milliseconds and I get the player here. But if there was a wall, right, that player would probably go inside the wall. So if you have played a slow multiplayer game, right, you can see players going through walls or just like jumping here and there, right? So that's where the lag compensation happens. So now moving to the big question, what is a state? A state, to be honest, right, it's a bunch of values saying that who's where and what health they are in and whatever properties that you actually set. And this is mutable. When I say mutable, that means it's subject to change on one point. So the problem that we have right now is in a P2P network, right, like a Photon, everybody maintains their own state of the game. So nobody is responsible saying that my information will be the most valid information I can claim, but there is no sort of verification of who is right and who is wrong, right? And also we have a huge other set of problems on where and which position any player should be there at any given time. So this is where the need for authoritative steps in, right? So this is where the actual course of this discussion actually starts, right? So why do we need authority in the very first place, even though Photon usually provides? So if you're a person who's making a multiplayer game right now and you don't need to worry about cheaters, then by all means you can use Photon. It's one of the easiest solutions that you have right now. Okay, so far, do you guys have any doubts? So I've been yapping about a lot of stuff. So if you have any doubts,
yeah, but Josh, that's one question, Josh.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. Yep. But Photon is very costly. To be honest, it's one of the cheapest solutions that you have. Even though it's a relay solution, right? It's one of the cheapest solutions that you have right now. So we'll go to the Photon website and see Photon pricing, right? We'll have a discussion about this one because this is pretty important.
Josh, add on to my question also. Like, okay, what is the other, other than Photon, what is the other server you suggest also?
Other, excuse me?
Any other suggestions other than Photon?
There used to be something called SmartFox, but I think they also abandoned the entire project. And I'll tell you a reason why people are abandoning this sort of networking, except for Photon, who's still famous on doing a P2P network, right? If you have seen any serious game that's been done recently, say Overwatch, Counter-Strike, TF2, or even PUBG or Fortnite, none of them use a P2P network, right? Because we'll soon discuss why and what's the other solution that we have. So this is, to be honest, right, this is an expensive solution. I have to agree that Photon is an expensive solution. But as a managed P2P system that gets you started immediately, right, this is a decent solution for you guys, any of the noobs who are stepping inside multiplayer at this point. But the major problem that I find with Photon is it's a closed system. When I say closed system, I can't take any of this multiplayer code that I wrote for Photon and use it in as another service. If I want to go away from the Photon, then I have to basically write the code from scratch. So that's why I usually avoid any closed systems, right? If it's not an open source solution, or if they're not going to give a source control, right, then we are going to have a problem with that. In many cases, Unreal still gives a source code control, right? So that means people can change the code to whatever they want and use a multiplayer layer on top of it. If you are already familiar with some multiplayer code, then you would have heard a high level layer of multiplayer code and a low level multiplayer code. Unity has been working on a high level multiplayer code that would be easier as a game service, but I think they're still trying to figure it out. They also recently bought a company called Multiplay, where PUBG servers usually, those are the guys who run PUBG servers at this point. So they're still trying to figure it out. We'll have a discussion over that as the slides progress, right? Okay. So any other doubt? Then we'll move on to what authoritative server is.
Any questions? Josh, no. Please go.
Okay. Have a drink. Okay. What is a game server? So now we are entering into authoritative systems. So what basically a game server is, your game plus you're adding a server functionality to it. When I say server functionality, the ability for other clients to connect to your application. That's about it. It's as simple as that. So what a game server is supposed to do is basically run all the game logic, who's shooting, and basically maintain the game state or the world state, right? This is how the world is, this is where the player is, and this is where they're going. The game is won or the game is lost, etc. All those information runs on the game server. So what basically it does is it takes the input from each of the clients, process the stuff inside, and gives a new state to every other client. So in this way, right, we know exactly who's in control. The server is in control. He knows what's wrong and if somebody has decided to cheat, right? In fact, it's pretty impossible to cheat because you're only going to give an input. So your mouse and keyboard will be the only input that's being sent across the network. You won't be sending where the position you are or anything. That's all been calculated by the server. So basically your entire game is going to run on a server, right? So that's where it's been doing. So Unity, right? Unity is still trying to figure it out. There's an open source solution where you can still use where C# sockets inside your server, inside your Unity application, and make it as a server, right? We'll discuss a little more stuff. So if you're talking about game service, right, then there's a couple of services that's already here, and most of them, or all of them except for the last one, is a closed system. So AWS provides something called the Game Lift, and Unity has just bought a company called Multiplay. They also give you a solution. PlayFab is a closed solution, but I think you can use it with Unity at this point. Improbable is also a closed solution. I think you have to be a studio in order for them to even give you an SDK. The same applies to Photon's Quantum and Bolt. So we'll go here and see what's actually it's about, right? So Bolt was actually an open source solution back then, and Photon bought these guys, and I think they put it for a pricing. It has some decent features where you have some authority over your. What's my thread slow? Okay, we have some authoritative movement. They have a state replication system that will get updated to all the clients, right? It's a neat solution, but I think one of the good products right now is Quantum. So we'll write our own system, something like Quantum later on this talk, right? But what it basically does is have an input layer just like this one, and they give you this pathfinding physics and math and all the job system for a game simulation. And Unity just renders the game. So basically, nothing in Unity will be used, and everything from the server will be used. And Unity will be just as a client rendering whatever happens inside the server part. So this is one of the closed systems that's been offered by Exit Games, right? You can very well use a game lift service as well. They have already an SDK for you guys to get started with C#. So, but let's move on, and I'll tell you what's the problem and what's the solution for this as well. Okay. So moving on, when you're making a game server, right, it's something you would have come across. It's called a headless server. So, and what headless server is basically happening is, as you can see, you just need a game logic, a game state, right? There's no way that you actually need a rendering that needs to happen. Rendering only happens on the client sides, right? So you can run your servers as a headless server. You can make a Linux build of your server and then just host it in any of the servers, and it should be up and running. Seems fairly easy, right? So I'm just going to cover this word called headless. That means none of the rendering component of Unity gets inside. So no material, no camera system, all those stuff will be omitted whenever you're taking a build. So even right now, you can just make an easy headless build. I think Unity does have a headless Unity, and then it should be easy to make. So they say it's command line argument. I think you have to just render it out as this one, and I think it's some hyphen something else. I forgot. No graphics. Okay, batch mode. Run the game in headless mode. The game does not display anything or accept user input. So when it says it doesn't accept any user input, that means it's getting the inputs as any of the sockets or through a network connection, right? That's where all the input is good. This is very useful running servers in a network game. Yeah, right? You guys can take a look at that later on when we're done. Okay, cool. So command line argument also allows you to send some properties inside the game. So that's how you actually configure your servers. You can say this is the port that we want. This is the amount of maximum players that are allowed inside this game, etc. So what is a master server? It's basically a service, right? It's one endpoint where every of the clients can get connected to that one, and it will give you a list of who's hosting the games and where they're hosting games and which one you can actually join. This can be also tied with any of the matchmaking services, right? So if you have already played PUBG or Fortnite, right, this would be basically the lobby screen. This gets connected to the master server that will give you what available games are there, and a matchmaking service will connect you to one of the rooms based on whatever stats they have maintained about you. So that's where you don't get to play with the pro players just because you came with PUBG and you've been playing PUBG only for an hour, right? It doesn't redirect you to an advanced player room where you get shot immediately. You all know that. So I've been talking about matchmaking, right? So matchmaking is nothing fancy. It's basically a database service that keeps the stats of what player data is player date and player stats are already being stored. So if you're not completely keen about this, right, it will just join you to whatever available room is there at this time. So I'm assuming that most of you guys already played a multiplayer game this year. So you would understand what matchmaking basically does. So matchmaking basically gets a list of game servers, and then it helps the players to join which room, and it reserves a seat if you're going to play along with your friends. You have a duo mode or a squad mode, right? It will reserve a seat in one of the rooms and say this is where you're supposed to land up. So basically an annoying aunt who keeps asking you when you're getting married, right? She maintains everybody's date of birth, and you if you get married or something like that. So there's a bunch of services that already provide this if you're even using an existing one, even in Unity as a headless server, right? There's PlayFab, and there's, I think Google introduced something called OpenMatch, or you can write your own system using any DB, like even MongoDB should be fine. You can use Firebase as well, so just to name a few. Okay. So what is a game client? So this is the interface, the end interface for the end user, right? Doesn't actually necessarily need to run any of the game logic. So this is where it differs from P2P. None of the clients have any of the game logic. So none of the score is getting calculated, where I'm getting shot at, where my position is at. None of the physics system, nothing is getting calculated on the client. So basically they remain a dumb client. They just act as an input system. The input is sent to a server. It will say this is where you're supposed to be, and only the rendering component plays a part in any of the client. So to give an action, right, the player does an action in the game, and that action is sent to the server, and the server calculates where you need to be, and the clients and every other client receives that change in the world, and they get and these guys just get to display the result of it. So that's what a game client basically does is. So looking at some of the examples, say PUBG or Overwatch or Counter-Strike, right? All of these have something called a game build and a server build. So if you have recently played Counter-Strike, right? Counter-Strike, okay. Counter-Strike, you can have a dedicated server, and you can be the server and other people can join in your IP addresses as well. I don't know how many people of you guys already played Counter-Strike to understand this one. So this is a common trait that they usually have, right? So the server and the client are usually from the same engine. So in most cases, they have Unreal or Unity, but they have different builds. So one build will be for the client and the other build will be for the server. So in Overwatch, right, they wrote the entire game from scratch. So they didn't use any existing engines. They just wrote the complete from ground up, building a network layer on the bottom, and then they started stacking up the physics system, the shooting system, the render system finally. So this is how an Overwatch system usually works. So as you can see, the most of the core will be the same, but different builds will be taken from the same engine. The client sends input, does the client side prediction, renders the game. The server build basically handles the physics systems, and the server side prediction handles the network traffic. No rendering will be there. So this is the common trait that you usually find with any AAA games that you have played recently. So this is a basic architecture that we have. They make a build of a Linux build, and they'll just run it on an instances of the game server on any of the services. Okay, and you noobs can just join and play the game. An authentication system would be like a PlayFab system, where they use your Facebook authentication, your email authentication, just to say and maintain your player stats. So this is the basic architecture that any of the AAA games that out there uses. So this comes, so if I think to answer the last question that somebody said that Photon was costly, right? This is super expensive. Servers are expensive. If you take a step back and think about it, right? You just made a AAA engine game. So I don't know how many high-end configurations that you guys have. I'm pretty sure you guys are having some decent i7 or i5 computers rendering and trying to play one session of the game, right? Imagine the same game running on a server. Okay, servers are expensive. Anything to do with clouds are expensive. Cheaper servers have slower processor. That means your game is going to run very slow, right? Closed solutions are even more expensive for a reason, because they do give you one of the highest powerful computers to run your game, and that's why AWS is also expensive. So we'll just have a quick look at AWS, right? I think that's one of the common AWS game. Um, let's see. Spot. Okay, so this is their M5. I think they start with the M5. They don't even offer you a simpler computer. M5 is I think it's how many cores? I suppose. M5 is 2 cores, so I'm pretty sure most of you guys already have a quad core processors inside, right? And this just one instance will cost you $50 per month, right? Two virtual CPUs. This doesn't even have a GPU. I mean, there's no need for a GPU then again, because there's no rendering happening. But anyways, there's 8 GB, 2 core processor, you're going to pay $50 per month, right? So this is one instance of the game. So if multiple people are jumping in and this server only allows 16 players at the same time, that means 16 players only can be there for $50. So if you're having concurrent players of 1,000, right, multiply by 50, so there will be some sorry, multiply by 100, so you'll have 10,000 users playing your game. 10,000 divided by 16, and if you do the math, I think you'll be probably paying somewhere between $40,000 just for 10,000 players or 20,000 players. So $40,000 is quite expensive if you think about it, right? So there's a reason why this is expensive, because you're trying to run a AAA game engine inside on a server, right? That's where game lift and multiplayer and all of the solutions come in. So in most of the closed cases, they don't even give you the SDK for us to start working on it, right? So like I said, per instance per server, that means if you're going to join a PUBG room, right? That means that server is only running one instance of the game. And for every instance of the game, say if PUBG is allowing you 100 players per instance, right? Rest of the 10,000 players are in different servers or running different instances of the game, right? So as you can see, authoritative is far more expensive than P2P, but they do offer you this incredible flexibility, the highest finesse of control that you get, right? So this is why authoritative is expensive. So let's sort of uncomplicate stuff. So I'm not going to come and say you can't do a AAA game engine by yourself. Yes, you can. Okay, but you need to know what you're doing and how you're going to do it, right? Writing the game and writing the game logic is the easiest part of a multiplayer, but bringing it outside and asking others to play and join, right? That's where things get a little more complicated. And most of the cases, these services out there will sort of lower you, saying that use our tech right now so that we can scale together. Um, um, if you do not know what you're doing, sometimes yes, especially when you're dealing with the AWS, right? They'll only charge you by the end of the month. So if you write an auto scale system or something like that, you'll probably have a hefty bill by the end of the month. It did happen to us. I think in a day, in one of our games, the Battle Legends, right? One of our games, we ran the server for a day. I just selected one checkbox saying that use a dedicated CPU and not a virtual CPU. And in a day, just a bill came for 10,000 rupees. And only like 200 people were testing that game back then. So you can sort of calculate how a price sort of jumps in if you do not know what you're doing. So okay, so let's see the problem from another angle, right? So far, what we've been doing is writing the server inside a game engine, right? So imagine if you're trying to make a very small game, say a tic-tac-toe game, right? And you're using Unity as your game engine. You know for a fact that tic-tac-toe is a very simple game. You don't need the entire physics system. You don't need the entire game engine to be compiled and ran inside a Linux server, right? So with the current web tech involved, right, like where you have Node.js, you have Golang, you have Dino, right? I think what we are doing here is we are going about the problem in a different solution. So don't make the game engine a game server. Instead, make a server your game engine. Okay, so this might be a little confusing, right? But this does have happened. So, have if any of you guys have played and .io games, they're incredibly popular in the last few years, right? In the last 5 to 6 years, a lot of IO games have been happening, right? So the age of IO games. So IO games take a fraction of the cost to run. I mean, you can run at least 500 CCUs, concurrent users on a server, which cost $5. That's about it, because there's no need for a very complex, hefty C++ game engine to run inside a server, right? It can run on super simple Node.js threading systems, and it can be incredibly light. The only problem here that I find is since there's no engine, right? Back in the days, if you've done Mario or any of the old school games, right? The game engine was where the game. So you make the game, not the game engine. What ended up happening in the last 15 years, right? We got so used to using engines that we forget that you can make a game even without an engine, right? So if you can think from that sort of angle, right? Only by adding the components that you need inside the game server, I think you can make a much better multiplayer services, right? So you get more instances, that means incredible amount of CCUs. So the same case, if I'm running in a node server, right, 50,000 CCUs will hardly cost me somewhere between like 10,000 to 20,000 rupees. And that same thing, if I'm trying to run a AAA game engine inside a game server, right, that would cost me both of my kidneys, and I still can't pay the uh, I still can't pay the amount for
Hello.
the AWS services. Okay, so I think before we go inside this one, do you have any questions so far? Because there's been a lot of topics that I've been covering so far. You can type it in the chat.
Any questions? Please feel free to put up in the chat. What is the server in the game?
Yes, that's exactly what we'll be doing recently. So a game, so far we've been seeing about making a game engine into a server, right? So you're adding code that accepts a socket or a network traffic inside your game engine. So if you're using Unity so far, so we've been trying to convert this Unity build into a server, right? So you have this entire chunk of Unity libraries that come along with the game server. And to be honest, right, Unity is not designed to be run inside a server. It's supposed to be running on a desktop, right? That means it builds this entire chunk of physics system and every other rendering systems that it already has, that you don't even need to run inside the game server. So what this question is, server is where you have a Node.js server and you put only the game logic inside the game Node.js server, right? Which is better, Photon or Node.js, both through the same using. Um, Actually, I wouldn't say Photon or Node.js, because they're sort of a different solutions out there. If you're talking about cost efficiency, Node.js is far more cheaper than Photon. Then again, Photon doesn't even give you control, any authoritative control. That means you don't still maintain any of the states inside the server, right? So I would say Node.js is better than Photon. In my experience, at least, since we used Photon in the past, and now that we moved to Node.js as a server, right, we'll probably never go back to Photon. So if you have figured out the solution, right, you would probably never would want to go back to um, Photon. The other problem with Photon is it's very engine centric, right? So if you want to make, say, Godot and you want to use Photon, you can't. Node.js is better for multiplayer game, right? Yes, that's the evangelism that I'm trying to do right now, saying that Node.js is one of the better solutions. What will be best cheap PC mobile console authoritative multiplayer solution? Whenever console is involved, right, or PC or any AAA title is involved, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you guys. I'm giving the option for you guys to be open as well. You can use any of the closed systems if you want. There's a bunch of solutions and better tutorials out there given by GameLift or PlayFab services if you're going for a closed systems. But I'm saying try to avoid any of the closed systems, especially when you're trying to make a small game. So if you're just stepping inside a multiplayer game, right, try to make a small game. Any of the IO games should be fine. Today, can you demo a multiplayer with Node.js? Exactly, yes. That's the objective of this entire talk. So the next 1 hour, we'll be using Node.js and we'll be making a game using Node.js and Colyseus and using Unity as the client, not the engine, as a client. Okay. So what's the time? We have 3 more minutes. So like I said, today we'll be using Node.js. Node.js, if you do not know, it's can we get a recording? Oh, okay. I suppose Node.js code is hard. Actually, not. It's relatively easy. I'm new to web development, and I find it incredibly easy to actually code in that one. Colyseus is an open source solution. Colyseus is not the only solution. If you're familiar with Golang, I would also suggest you Nakama. So Nakama. It's done by Heroic Labs. So they do also give you a bunch of other solutions, and they've been used by a bunch of big guys as well. This is incredibly light as well. So this runs on Golang. If you guys are familiar with Golang programming, this would be a good start as well. But I personally, this is my personal preference. Colyseus has been a much more collaborative and bigger open source project that I've seen recently. And I have seen this project grow in the last year and a half so much. So as you can see, we also been featured on their website for making a game. This is incredibly light. The clients are incredibly light. The documentation is much better when it comes to Colyseus, right? So let me. So most of them are open source. The idea here is any game engine can be used, right? So this is not a Unity centric. This one, you can have one of the client in Unity, one of the client in Unreal, and have the same experience, right? So now that's a huge step up. So forget cross-platform at this point. Can we use Unity as a server? Yes, you can use Unity as a server, but not along with Node.js. It will be running as an independent one in one of your Linux server. Yes, you can use Unity as a server. Is Node.js hard? No. So before we jump inside, so I hope you guys are still awake. We've been covering a lot of topic recently. So we'll have a small break, right? It's been an hour. So the next part will be a huge ramp up. I'll be just showing you code running a Node.js server. Is Colyseus a server? No. Node.js is the server. Colyseus is a framework that you run on top of it. So what Colyseus basically does is handles the sockets, a matchmaking system, and room system. That's what it basically does. It's completely free, by the way. It's an open source project. Cool. You guys want to take a minute of break while I set up the other stuff? You can keep asking questions if you want to.
I think use this time to ask a lot of questions. So I think you can get clarified with Josh on that. It may be anything on basic questions also. Don't feel anything bad that can I ask some basic questions. Don't
Yes,
feel
you
that.
can ask basic questions.
To ask any kind of a question. The whole thing is to clear all kind of a doubts relevant to this server related stuff. So feel free to unmute, put your questions up. So the ultimate thing is your questions. We want it to be get answered. That's the whole scenario. You can ask even Josh to tell the trade secret how he implements the server also in his games. What, Josh?
Okay.
Josh, by the way, which server you use? Colis or
we used, as you can see, our game is actually being featured in the showcase.
okay.
That's Battle Legends, by the way. Okay. So this is Battle Legends. This entire game, right, runs on one server, and it supports up to 500 concurrent users, and we hardly pay $10. We pay around $35. That's it, and it supports around 500 CCUs. Right, I think it's right now in testing with the MX player. Soon I think it will be published. But this is the this one. So what we basically did was trying to make a battle royale game with the same shooting from PUBG and everything, but dumb it down to a 2D experience, right? The entire game build can be loaded inside a web browser for 8 MB. So this is one of the most lightest games that we did. The game server build is only 13 MB, which is incredibly light, and it runs super fast. So it just needs a single core processor, and it will support you around 50 CCUs at any given time. So this is what I'm saying. So the other huge advantage is I can run the same client on a HTML5, and I can use a completely different engine, say Unity, since even this game is not made in Unity, by the way. I can run a Unity version of the same game where one player can be playing in the HTML5 version and the other player in the same world can be playing through Unity. So that's sort of advantage you get, right? It's completely engine agnostic. That means you don't have to depend on any of the dependencies of Unity or any game engine, because you made your own game engine from scratch, right?
Yeah, one more question. From your experience,
Colyseus and Nakama. Yes, so Colyseus has better support. So that's what I felt. Even though I feel like Nakama would be a faster solution in the future, but I think their documentation and their community is not there yet. So that was the huge problem that I found with Nakama. And the other problem with the Nakama is it's completely written in Golang, right? So Go is it's a relatively new language. It's written by Google only for it works best for servers. It doesn't have a middle ground for us to write a complete game engine on top of it, right? A game logic running on top of it. But the other huge advantage of Golang is it's completely multi-threaded. That's one of the huge advantages that I heard from them guys. But I personally, in my experience, I couldn't get all the packages that I needed. For example, Battle Legends, right? We used Box 2D in the background, and NPM provided all of the, so if I just search NPM box 2D, right? That's it. I get a box 2D library and I can just plug it with the Colyseus engine and I can use all the physics system right away. Now I have a physics engine inside my Colyseus, right? How many concurrent users in Colyseus? It completely depends on your server, by the way. If you have a much more powerful server, it will handle more CCUs, right? It's completely scalable. You can scale to whatever you want, scale it down whenever you like. So you don't have to pay any fixed prices like you do in Photon. So Photon, you get a package, say $350, I suppose, for 1,000 CCUs, right? But the problem is if none of the people show up there, you're still going to end up paying $350, right? In Colyseus, you don't have to. You can scale down whenever you want to and scale up whenever you want to, and you just pay that amount of price to whatever service that you can use. So you can use, say, Linode. We use a couple of Linode servers just to do a quick test. Linode, we use AWS, or you can use DigitalOcean if you want to. There's a bunch of cheap servers that you can use. So even with one core, you can still run up to, even though we have a physics system that's running, it'll still handle around 200 CCUs and all for the price of $5, which is a huge deal, by the way. I mean, you can save a lot of money if you know what you're doing, right? So I think DigitalOcean has their own pricing. You can take a look at any of the solutions once you want to publish. But for today test, right, we'll be publishing inside Heroku, which is a free solution which can run any Node.js servers immediately, free of cost. You don't need to, for testing your game, I highly suggest you guys use Heroku. Even though the servers are in Europe, a little bit slow, but if you want an immediate service or if you're planning to make a much more real-time game, which has to have less latency, I suggest you guys going for a Mumbai server in Linode or in AWS. Okay. I think DigitalOcean is in Bangalore, so you'll have a much lesser ping if you're in South India. Cool. So can we get started? Everyone ready? Can I get a thumbs up in the emojis? So if there are more designers here at this point, I think this will be only code heavy. Moving on. Okay, cool. Nice. Whew. Okay. So let's get started on the, actually this one. So what we're going to basically do is convert an existing Unity C# prototype that I made into Colyseus TypeScript, right? So we are going to convert the game logic to a server logic, and we'll set up a Colyseus project, and then we use Unity as a client, and then if time is still there, we'll sort of upload that inside Heroku, and let's get to play the game that we built. So if you guys are following around, I think this will be a little fast paced to follow around, but in any case, if you guys still want to keep up, you probably need to already have installed the Git, Node.js and NPM and Unity 2020, or anything higher or lower, it doesn't matter, right? I'm just using Unity 2020. Cool. So what do I have right now? So let's go and look at the code. So you guys can download the Unity prototype that I did right now from this Git URL. So I'll try to, can I paste it inside? So I pasted in the chat, by the way, guys. So this is the Unity prototype that I did. I'm on an Apple M1. It's relatively slow when it comes to Unity because it runs on a VM. So guys, please excuse my compile times. So if you can see, the game is incredibly basic. I made sure it's incredibly basic because the whole point is Unity is not the game engine here. We're going to use Node.js as the game engine. So we have a look around the game manager. I hard coded most of the code. I didn't write any fancy coding here so that students from my cat or anyone else can easily understand the code, right? So nothing too complex here. The entire game logic is only, you guys can see the screen, right? Can I get a thumbs up on the chat? Okay. Why? Oh, okay. Good.
It's perfect. You can go ahead.
Okay. So we have an array. So I hope all of you guys have already played tic-tac-toe. If you're not familiar, it's basically something like this, right? And one of them put an X and the other guy puts a 0, the other guy puts an X, that puts 0 and X, and if this is there, the guy wins, right? So this is basically a tic-tac-toe game. So what I ended up doing is have the entire thing in an array. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 0 meaning that no value is there, right? So an empty slot, I have defined it as 0. So let me okay, cool. Still type. So in define, I said it's if it's a 0, that means give me an empty slot. So this is the thing for checking the winner. So I hard coded most of them because I didn't want to confuse with any of the logic. So I check 0, 1, and 2. So that's 0, 1, and 2. If all of them have the same values, then return whatever values in there. So a player 1 would be 1, and the player 2 is -1, and an empty slot is 0. So, and then I have one more property which changes who's in current turn right now. And this is the only logic that will be probably writing as an input from the user. So the user would probably send an input saying that I'm the player ID, this is my player ID, and I clicked on this slot number. That's all. That's all the client needs to send to the server, right? So that's about it. Then I just made a singleton of this class, and this will switch user. And if it doesn't have any empty slot, and then it will declare a draw. Or if somebody has this one, it will declare who's the winner is. Okay. So this is a very simple code, right? If you have any doubts, you can type on the chat below. Next, we'll start converting this to Node.js code. So by the way, I'll just, I didn't play the game, sorry, my bad. How do I move this? This is a huge bar that takes over my screen. So I press X, and then the next one will automatically 0, the second player, and this one is an X, and the 0 and X, and it will say winner is 1. So a sort of this sort of thing usually helps when you're making a multiplayer. Pick any game engine that you prefer and start making a prototype as quick as possible. Just run unit test, just the game logic, and use that part, and then export it to a Node.js part, right? That way it helps, right? In Node.js, you don't get to see what you're doing. So if you're super familiar with Unity, then it's the fastest way to do a prototype. So what I'll end up doing is I'll just copy this entire code because that's all the code that I need for running this game. So damn. Sorry, my bad. Okay. So we'll make a server instance, right? We'll go to this one. We'll use Colyseus documentation itself so that you guys will get familiar with the documentation as well. So to get started, this is all you need, by the way. Let's see to go to the next.
Yes. Session
So this NPM just initiates a Colyseus app, and I'm going to name this nothing fancy. Tic-tac-toe server. But don't worry about this one. I'll obviously upload it to GitHub, and you guys can download it from there. Okay, cool. Can we get a recording of this part? Yes, you can. So it will ask you which language that you want to start with. I'll say TypeScript because C# and TypeScript is much closer to JavaScript, and I'm not a web developer to be handling this one. So this will just download a template and set up the project for you. By the way, this also works Windows. You don't need to worry about this. Completely independent of OS as well. So you can make sure you can develop this in Linux, Mac OS, or Windows, or even in Raspberry Pi if you want to. So this will take a few minutes. That's it. So I think we have a project set. So I can see the folder here. CD tic-tac-toe. So, and I open it in Visual Studio Code. If you guys aren't using Visual Studio Code, I highly recommend it for writing stuff like this. So if you guys aren't familiar, how many of you are familiar with Node.js? I forgot to ask that question. If you're not, it's fine. No. Okay. A Node.js is basically written in C++. It can run a server on any given system. So this is basically an interface between, so to give you a quick history, right? What ended up happening is writing server code like Apache or any other server, right? They all run on as an application on a server, right? On any of the computer, not server, any of the computer, they run as an application. But in order to do any manipulation to the servers, right? Like PHP or ASP.NET, you needed some sort of scripting language on top. That's where PHP came in. That's where ASP.NET came in, where it interfaces between the server application and the user that wants to fetch or do anything to that computer, right? In this case, server. But Node.js was a funny thing because what this crazy fellow did is used JavaScript, which was already familiar with running any of the HTML5 logic, right? He used JavaScript as a scripting language on top of a C++ code. So underneath, Node.js is basically C++ application. You can do any of the manipulation or any of the scripting using JavaScript. So later on, I think people also implemented TypeScript on top of it, which is what we are doing right now. So in this way, we are just modifying the server or telling the server or scripting a set of instructions to the server and how it's supposed to operate. So you can take a quick look at any of the YouTube and learn what Node.js is. But the only thing that we need to worry about right now is package.json and SRC folder. So we'll start making a game as quick as possible because we only have 40 minutes to go, right? So what ends up happening here is this package or script just shows you what packages are being installed in this Node.js system. So we'll just start to run and see what ends up happening, right? So I'll just open this one and say npm run start. So your Colyseus app is running at this server location. So localhost means that it's your own computer, right? And it's running on the port 2567. So if I go and copy paste this one inside browser, it says it's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum. So if I close this one, close this application, I think you won't be able to see this again. So you understand what's going on, right? So npm run start. I'll keep this on for now. Okay. So where does this information come from? So on top of it, one of the famous packages that Node.js uses is express.js. To be honest, I don't know anything about express.js. I just know what it basically does. Then again, you don't need to know all of this in order to make a game. We are game developers. We don't need to worry about web development part. We just need to know a little bit of know-how here and there. So this is a fast web framework that gets stuff running as quick as possible, right? So where does this run? Colyseus runs on top of Express, by the way. So if you can go to arena.config, right? So if you just close it here, right here, it says it's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum. That means in the root path, right? The root path, it just gives a response of this is what that needs to be shown here. So there's another path also saying /Colyseus. Okay, we'll try that one and see where that goes. /Colyseus. So this shows you the monitoring of how many rooms are there, how many connections are connected to this the server instance at this given time. So none of them are running, by the way. So we'll head back. So that's about it. You can create your own path here. Once again, we don't need to worry about any of that. Okay. So I'll just talk about Colyseus at this point and how to make a quick game as soon as possible using it. So the only thing that we need to worry about here is something called rooms. So room is basically a template. So when players join in, this is the template that joins, that connects them to this room. So this room is a template. Okay. So when I request to make a room, right, or a server is being requested, or a matchmaking system comes and says, now make me a room, right? If you're in PUBG, right? Matchmaking server says that, okay, the 4 players that needs to be joining in one of the room, and the server needs a template of what that room is supposed to be, right? So in this case, it just starts with something called my room. We have been given an example room here, which we'll study closely. Okay. So if you go to Arena, right, there's somewhere here it says game server define my room is this room, and we're just giving this class. We're passing this class as a template to the game server. That means any request that comes in makes a room of this template of a class. Okay. If it's a little bit confusing, don't worry about it. It's actually much simpler than you think it is. Okay. So there you have a room, and here you have on create. What happens when somebody joins in, what happens when somebody leaves, what happens when the room is being destroyed. So if nobody is in the room automatically gets destroyed. Okay. Why can't I? Okay. So we created this one. So far, we created a Colyseus app, an empty app. So this is the anatomy of a Colyseus app. So we have rooms, On top of that room, we have something called a room state. Right? This is the one that we usually want to get synced across all of the clients. So the clients also need to get what state of the world is right now is. Okay, you can have multiple schemas on less than that. Okay, once we get inside you, I think you'll have a much better understanding. Okay, cool. So under schema, you have something called my room state. So this is the state that gets synced. So they have given you an example saying that this is my synchronized property, blah, 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 all of that stuff. So let's get inside. To save time, I do have a bunch of code already written. So this is a state that we have right now. So we go to this code because this is what we're going to convert, right? So I'll just copy paste this entire thing. We don't want this, suppose. So we'll just paste our game logic here. Because now coming from C# to TypeScript, we need to make some changes here, right? So the first change that we do is we need to synchronize the board across all of the clients. So in order to have a type to be synchronized across, right, there's a bunch of schemas that is already available inside. So I use an int, this one, int each. Once we finish this, I'll stop and I'll answer the questions. If you guys are confused at this time, it's completely okay because it's sort of too many things happening at the same time, right? Once my we haven't imported this one. That's converted. And one other thing that we probably need to convert is this one. We need to tell which turn is currently, right? All the clients need to be synchronized. So this part, right, this is the part that gets synchronized with every other client. So we can have a bunch of logic, but that any of the logic won't get synchronized with any of the clients. So only the part of information of properties and values that we need to send will be synchronized, right? So I'll just convert this property into this one. Also, I think we need one more property saying that if the player is ready, if the room is ready, if two players have joined the room, then that's when you're supposed to start the game, right? So for that one, I think I'll add a Boolean. So if you guys are a little bit confused right now, you can type it inside the chat window. So this is called a schema. So schema basically is a synchronizable structures that gets synchronized across the network. So for that part, I think you have understood, right? I'm looking at the chat window. So far, I think everybody's on the same page. I think one more thing that needs to be synchronized is this one. Okay. So I'm going to convert this empty slot, the same thing. I'm just going to convert into a TypeScript one. It's the same logic written in TypeScript. Okay. Then for the winner code, again, this is fairly simple. Come here, It's the same code in TypeScript, by the way. And this is the one that I'm not going to worry about right now. Okay, I'll just comment this one because this is supposed to be an input, right? So we'll talk about this later on. So we'll just finish the easiest ones here. We don't need this. Awake and start doesn't work in any of this logic, right? These are like C# code that we don't want. Then you have something called switch turns. So whenever we want to switch an user to a different one or the turns to a different player, this is the one that we use. So I'll convert that one as well. So far so good, I suppose. Now we'll also change the assign slot right now. Why is it showing? Do you guys have any doubts? I'll wait for the questions right now.
The Kaushik has a question.
Here C# code convert to JS, right? No, actually I'm converting it to TypeScript. So we are using TypeScript. TypeScript is a subset of JavaScript. That means you can write JavaScript as well and also TypeScript on top. TypeScript is very useful, meaning as in TypeScript means you are still type based. JavaScript is not type. So in C#, right, you have to mention what an int is. You just can't have an obj of everything. So in int needs to be an int, a bool needs to be a bool, right? In JavaScript, you don't need to do that. It's everything is an object. TypeScript gives you a much more control over JavaScript, saying that this is the type I want to be. So I can defining a boolean as a boolean, a number as a number. Okay. Meaning you calculate everything on the server. Yes, everything needs to be a server. That's the whole point, right? We are making an authoritative game. That means none of the logic gets run on any of the clients. Okay, cool. So moving forward, I think I'll change this name from my room to probably tic-tac room state. Okay. What if my game logic is based on Unity game-based components? Will it be possible to convert? Yes, you can. I think at this point, that's how we did it, by the way, in Battle Legends. It's a completely component-based system, and it runs on Node.js. But we'll start somewhere simple, right? It's a turn-based system game with one player not playing. How long the opponent will wait? Yes, we'll talk about that as well. Okay, cool. I'll have these questions. So I change this to this one and also rename this to my state.ts so that will be much more understandable, right? Save. We come back to the room and are you guys okay with the anatomy of this one, Colyseus app at this point? And can you guys give a thumbs up? I wanted this to be a much more interactive session, by the way. Okay, so rooms can share different states, right? It can be assigned to a different state. Every room has major 4 callbacks. When the room is being created, when a player joins in, and when a player leaves and the room gets destroyed. Room listens from the clients through a callback called on message. An on message is basically, you can say if a client is sending a message, I can give if the message type is what and what the object is about. Okay, so that's on message. State is the one synced across all the clients. So this, right, this tic-tac-toe state, right here, this is the value that gets across all of the clients. So none of this actually gets calculated, or the client wouldn't even know anything about this one. He will only get this set of properties. So you can understand what's actually going on, right? So this is what is responsible. This is the state where it says this is what the current state of the game is right now. So any changes that happens, immediately all of the clients do get that information. So I wanted to add one more schema to this project, saying that I'll add a player, right? So since we don't have a player and a set of properties, so I could be a player, I could join in, and if I want to change my own name, everybody needs to get updated what my name change is also is about, right? So that's player.ts. Just create one, and I was originally not planning to copy paste at all, but since I think we're running out of time, I think I'm sort of speeding up the entire process. Okay. So in this player, right, I can have two more schemas saying that what the player ID, player index is supposed to be, and what the name of the player is supposed to be. So whenever I'm creating a new player, I'm just sending a constructor, setting the player name and the index. So that's about it. We'll come back to the room. I'm changing this to tic-tac room. Also changing this room so that we have some sort of consistency. So what do you want to happen when the room is created? We want to assign a new state of tic-tac room state, right? Simple as that. That's all we need to wanted to do. So I'll just add one more console log here because I like my consoles to be a little bit colorful. Okay. So what I want to happen when a player joins the room. That's the next logic that I wanted to write. Every client comes with its own set of IDs, by the way. Okay. So in definition, right, I said a player index can be either one, which is player one, and this is player two, identify as -1. This is the value that will be stored inside the array. So -1 would be player two, -1 would be player two, 1 would be player one. I hope you guys still on track. Since I made a player one, right, I want this to be synchronized as well. Since everything goes back to the room state by the end, I'll add players as inside as well. Okay. So we'll discuss about this, right? You guys are confused about it. So you are the client, right? You're trying to join the game, and you can join with your own set of options, right? You can have your own set of objects that you can send along when you're joining the game. So in this set, I just say options.name, right? So nothing fancy here. If the object is null, then just set it to an empty string. That's about it. So this is a small bit of logic that I wrote, which is if the player index is less than 2, right, and the game is not ready yet, you can just add that new player inside. And I set the player state, right? Set players. This state is basically this one right here. Okay, this state. And I'm setting this player as a map schema. Map is basically a dictionary. If you guys are familiar with dictionary, it basically assigns the client ID and the name of the object. So, and the object type as player inside. So that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm assigning the player index -1 or +1, whatever it is, player index is, and then the name of the this one, and I'm creating a new player, and I'm setting the client ID, which is basically a session ID according to the clients, and I'm assigning the player to it, and then I'm incrementing the player index. So what ends up happening is if two players are inside, right? If two players are inside, then I change the state of this room saying that it's ready to start the game, basically. And I set the current turn to player one. So player one should start the game. Then I'm locking this room. That means no other player can join this room. Okay. So far, so good. I hope you guys are on the same page. Feel like I'm a bit rushing, but that's okay. So I think one of you asked a question, if turn-based, one of the opponent is leaving, right? That means I'm going to declare the other player as the winner. If the game has started, right? So hold on. If the game is started, that means the game is ready. And if one of the client leaves, then I say, this is the client ID. Make sure the other guy is the winner. So I just go through the list of players, and if that player ID is not the same as the disconnected ID, then I declare his player index, right, which could be -1 or +1 as the winner. So you don't need to restart the application every time. Okay, we have only 15 minutes to go. So okay, I forgot to save this one. So tick tack. Colyseus app. Tick tack. Good. I think that's it. I think your server is running at this point. So I'll give you questions for the next 2 minutes, and then we'll start the client immediately. Sorry, guys, I'm rushing in because I wanted to make sure whatever that we covered so far, you guys understood. So it's no point on me rushing to the finish line without you guys following up what I'm doing, right? So you guys, any questions, type it away the next 2 minutes, and then we'll make a client as quickly as possible. Any questions, guys? So if you're wondering where I got all of these types from, right? It's clearly in the documentation. You don't need to worry about that. If you go here, it says what schemas are. So int 8, you can define this is the type of each of the variables that are in. So if you don't need a number can be a huge value, right? It can go from this to this one, but that's going to add more weight on the network. So in network, every packet needs to be as light as possible. So if you want to scale something down, or if you don't want something to be synchronized, don't send it. Okay. Those are the set of types that you can create here. One thing that I've used extra is array schema, this one, and a map system, a map schema right here for the players. Everyone is cool? Okay, I'm assuming since there's no doubts, I think I can continue. So we got the server running, right? During gameplay, one person having internet issue or received a phone call at that point, how will the game sync? Okay, this is the beauty of authoritative, right? Even if that player gets disconnected, the player states is still maintained on the server. So when he comes back and joins in, right, he will get the most updated state from the server. So none of the data will be lost. This is one huge advantage over P2P or Photon than to Colyseus. This one. Also, there's one more thing here. It's called on leave, and then you have something called consented, right? So if the player leaves wantingly, right, then you can say and declare the other player as the winner. If they have an intent connection, this would probably come in as false. So you can run a reconnection logic in here. I think they already have a reconnection example. So allow reconnection. So this is an example if somebody gets reconnected and they can join back again. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start making the client as quick as possible. So bear with me. If you guys just want an existing client that I already have and just run through the code, or do you guys want me to write from scratch? You can comment below. Okay, cool. Hope you guys don't get overwhelmed by the client because it's really simple. I don't want to scare you in if you guys. This is a very fun project, so don't get overwhelmed by it, especially seeing Node.js. Okay, I'll run through what I have right now. So what I basically did is made a prefab of a button, and it has something called slot button, right? And then everything else I just dumped it on game manager because usually I don't uh, like this. I usually prefer the game logic to be a different one and the UI to be in a different manager. But in this case, right, since this is almost like a prototype, I just wanted people to understand as quickly as possible. So to run through, right, I'll just run through quickly on the documentation. So to install a Unity package, right, you just need to go to the package manager and add this URL. This will ensure that Colyseus is added to the project. So if you go to the packages, I think you'll see Colyseus SDK right here inside. That's it. That's all that you need to do inside this one. So the next part is probably you need to create a serialized a scriptable object. Right click, create Colyseus, and generate a scriptable object. And this one, you just need to mention where the server is at, right? So right now it's pointing to my Heroku app, which I don't want. I can just say localhost, because I'm running it localhost 2567. So that's the path that I have given here. Right here. So this is the path, right? Localhost 2567, and I give you that path. So I'll run through the code as quickly as possible. We have 10 more minutes to go, right? I'll put a repo dump so you guys can have more questions. Ajay,
Yes,
is that possible where even after this session, people can ask me questions, I can answer them?
definitely. We will have anyway immediately within a day. We will upload this video in the YouTube, so they can start putting the questions in the comments where they can chat with you there, or
Okay,
we can
cool.
have it in the Discord also.
If you guys want to continue more questions, right, you can jump in Discord. Will this session
Yeah.
be terminated right after 4 o'clock?
No. It will be extended. If you want it, if the people are interested, we can extend it, or we can continue as a part 2 later part.
Okay, cool. So I was a little worried about this part, by the way. At the same time, I didn't want to rush in as well, right?
Okay.
So
It is based on the attendees' interest level.
no, nothing to do with their attention span. I think they have enough attention span. It's just that I have to cover from the basics all the way to
Understood.
here, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Okay. So the only thing that you guys need to concern yourselves is right now is something called states right here. So if you look at it, does it look familiar? You can put an answer here, yes or no. So if you guys are familiar with this one, by the way, this was generated. I didn't type this one out. So what it basically does is creates a schema just as you see right here. So you have a tic-tac room state, right? This one, and you have a player schema that looks like this, and everything is under schema. So what it basically does is there's a generator in the schema. Okay, just scroll all the way down. There's a way to generate this schema to C# code, by the way. So what we did previously was convert the C# code to TypeScript, right? This basically does the opposite. This takes the schema folder and exports C# code from it. Okay, so what gets synchronized to um, the client is the same one. So you get players that get synchronized, you get the same bool, right? And then you get the current turn schema, blah blah, right? And if you go inside player, you have the player index, which is an int8 type, and you get the player name. Okay, so this part you guys understand, right? So do you guys have an idea what's going on already? So what we're basically doing, we're synchronizing this data, how it looks exactly like this, how it exactly mutates in the server, gets reflected as an object inside the client. So any changes that happens to any of the schema, we can take a look at that and make changes accordingly, right? So in the game manager, so can I scale the thing down? Just it's a little big, right? You guys can still see, right? Any thumbs up? Cool. So you can still see. So problem all the way, I'm going to on top of it. So what I'm basically doing is I'm creating a client for Colyseus, which is one of the component here. This runs as a separate thread, so you don't need to worry about a Unity thread getting in the way. Okay, and we create a Colyseus room just like we did inside here. Okay, so create a Colyseus room, and here we just assign what state that needs to be modified in this room, right? Hope you guys are still following me. And then I wrote something called client equal to new client and the settings that we did. So settings.websocket.endpoint. So this is basically this one. So I'm just getting this endpoint code, endpoint address and sending it. That means this client needs to connect to this address right here. Okay. And if you guys aren't familiar with async and await, I highly recommend it. If you're using Unity 2019 or even 2018, I'm not sure, but 2019 and above, just ditch inurables and switch to async and await. This is far more effective and smoother for writing, right? So when I say await, that means it will wait till this function runs and then only it will move to the next one. Okay. So what this basically does is an async connect to server. And if you're already familiar what's going on, I'm sending a dictionary of options, a string and an object. So what I'm actually sending here is options dot new dictionary, and I'm adding a name to the string. Yeah, I'm generating a random name, player, blah, blah, and this will just say a number from 0 to 1000. So later on, you can change it to whatever you guys want. So if you want to move this, have an input field here and say, this is my name, and you type it there and you send it to the server and it will display this name. So where does this options go, right? We'll come to that later. So let me get the very first state from the room. So client, I say join or create tic tac room, and then I'm saying this address. So this name, right? This needs to match with this one right here. So I'll just change this one. Okay, cool. Tic tac toe and options. This options I'm sending while I'm joining the room. So when I say join or create, right? If there is no room available, then it will create a room like that. So what basically Colyseus does is it comes with this own matching system as well, which you can completely change and replace it to something else like PlayFab or anything that you want to prefer. These are some UI stuff that I'm doing by the way, notification systems. And this is the part where I'm actually creating the grid of buttons. Okay, that's as simple as that. So on destroy, I usually unregister whatever I'm registering. Okay. I want to leave the room when I close this app, and I'm saying room.leave means, and I'm saying something called true here. That means I'm leaving by consent. So when you can see here, right, consent, it shows consent right here. That means I'm leaving on my own accord. I am not disconnected by an internet failure or anything like that. So far, when I'm saying join and create, and this options right here is sent to this right here options. And I say, if there's an options name, if it's not null, then assign it as the name of the player. Okay, cool. So far, so good. So in the button, I just create a bunch of buttons that I made a prefab of, and then I'm assigning an index to it. So that's the same 0 to 1, saying that this is the button that I clicked. That's what I'm saying, right? And I'm registering this events. So this is the part that's a little more interesting, right? We know that for fact the state right here, state has values of players and board. And any change that happens on the state, we can listen as a delegate here. Okay, cool. So players on state, if there's a change here, right, on players, if a player has been added, then this ones get called immediately. Okay, then it will send a player object of its details. So that's the player index, the player name that's been added here. So one thing I'm checking here is if the key has the same as the room session ID. This room session ID, right? This is the same as the client ID right here. So this client ID, client ID right here, right? This is the client ID. For the client, it's called session ID. That's the only change that we have here. So that means that matches the same player. I'm saying if the room ID and the player that has been added, that means I'm the local player, right? So I just assign it as a local player and also set as the local player index. This is for my own sake. Then I'm saying, so what ends up happening if you're making changes inside the player? So if there's a change inside here, and if the name is changed or the player index is changed, then I need to track those changes as well, right? So what I'm end up doing is I'm getting this player object in here, and I'm adding the same thing on changes here, right? Just like that, I'm saying on change, whatever changes are there, then for each change, do whatever changes that you want. In this case, I have added one more delegate called update.player, and I get a string and a data change. So this is one tricky part, right? C# doesn't know what fields are being sent to it. For that, it only is an object. Only to a certain degree, it can figure out what type of object is there. So inside the server, we have defined a type. But when sent to a stream of data, right, there's no such thing as type base, and everything is sent as bytes. So you have to ensure that you have to convert this whatever value back towards original form. So you can use C# convert and change this object back to its original data type, since you know what data type it is. So we know for a fact this is an int. That's why I'm converting back into int, right? So far so good. So on the room.change, right, I'm listening to this one right here. And the same field I'm adding is ready, is current, current. So this is the same value as is ready, current turn, board. Okay, right here. If the game is ready, then do a logic of ready, and the current turn is being changed, do a bunch of changes there as well. If the winner index is changed, then notify who is the winner. Okay. You guys any doubts? I think we already ran out of time.
Any doubts? I hope everyone liked the session, and we are looking forward for more questions. If you want to interact with Josh in more and asking him more questions, kindly feel free to jump into Discord, and Josh is available there. And
Can you guys give me another 15 minutes so I can wrap a little things up? If everybody is okay, give a thumbs up.
Yep, that's a good note for us. Yeah, 15 minutes. Yeah, okay. Please go ahead.
Okay. I hope this is interesting. If you can say an yes for that also. Okay. Thank you so much. Because
yes.
If this is a class, right, I would be actually getting feedback from you guys immediately. So at the same time, I don't want to rush and confuse you guys. Okay. So cool. Thank you, by the way. So, okay, so far what we've been seeing is any changes that happen to the state is being reflected on the client. So as you can see here, any changes on change, and this happens immediately. What if I want to send something back to the server, right? So this is the part that gets very interesting. So nothing fancy here. It's so simple. In fact, you can go back to here, right? They have already given an example for this on message and for whatever string, or you can send a number as well. So right here, you can say string or a number. Okay, you can identify a message type by a string or a number, and then you can send a bunch of messages that you want. You can encapsulate inside a dictionary of objects, and then you can send it to the server. Yes, since C# is strongly typed, this one, right? Node.js is completely loosely based. It doesn't care what data type you actually send. It will just try to figure out if it's an object or a number or a string. That's it. Okay. And in most cases, everything gets converted to JSON and then it's encrypted and then sent here to the server. So let's not worry about all of that. So we'll say if the server is listening from the clients, right? We'll say this message, whatever type it's sending, and what client it came from, and what message the client sent me. Okay. In order for a Unity to send back to the server any changes that it made or any input in this matter, this is how you send it basically. So if you tap off any of the buttons, right? Sorry. So inside the slot button, when you tap on it and saying assign slot index. So whatever index that I actually tap, that's what I'm sending. So if you look closely, right, I'm not even sending what type of player it is, what my player index is. That's not, I'm not even sending that one. Okay, whether I'm -1 or 1, I'm not sending that. I'm not even sending that index. I'm just saying this is a slot index that the player tapped. Okay, this is the level of control that you get when you're dealing with authoritative. There's very less chance for people to actually cheat in this regard. So what I'm sending is room send, and I'm assigning a byte, okay, which is basically a number. Message type assign slot, don't worry about this one. This is nothing but an enum. Okay, so I can just say 1 here. So you don't think this is some crazy function that you need to know. Okay, this doesn't mean. Then what I'm actually doing is I'm creating a class. This is the problem with C#. Since everything is type based, you have to make a class for every request that you make. If this is a TypeScript of something else, right, you can just send a bunch of objects. Here you have to make sure it depends to a class. So I'm saying assign slot request, and I'm saying player index and the slot index. Here what I'm sending is player index, the local player index, that's the object right here, and the slot index, whatever button I actually tapped here. Okay, so this I have to send back to the server. Cool. So right here, I'm going to add this. Instead of this one, I'm just going to add. When I create this room, I want to put a listener of this message type of assign slot blah blah to 1. So this is the one that I've sent, right? Just hard coded for now. Okay. 1. This is the client. So I'll say this is the message that I received from this player, and I'm saying I'm going to process this. Okay, processed. But that's what I'm actually saying. So this state request assign slot by the player request message this one. So if this is familiar, this is the same logic that we actually converted from the C# code. Assign slot player request, and it will say if it's not the current turn of the player, it's not your current turn, and then it will send a false. If it's the same one, it will assign this one, and then it will switch the turn. Before switching the turn, it will run the logic whether this player actually won or not. If this winner is 0, that means it's either draw, or you can still have one more play at it, or it will assign the slot to it. Okay, cool. Can we test it? So this is another headache, right? You have to make bills in Unity. It's not as easy as HTML5 where we just press Control S and you have a new bill. And so while this is compiling, if you have doubts, fire it away. You guys have any doubts so far? Will you send the link to mail ID when uploaded? I'm not sure. I'll give you the URLs here itself if you guys want it. I haven't uploaded on the. So the server will be at this address. And the client will be at this address. So you guys can look at the code. Yes, of course, I'll share the project, man. What's the point?
The project link will be, the link will be in the description. You can grab that from the YouTube, or you can anyway, as we told you, it is there, and Josh is there in the Discord, and it will be even shared in the Discord also. You can get connected from there. Those who want this project details or anything on this.
So I'll make a quick build immediately, okay? Then we can see what's actually going on in the background. I should have tested with this one first. Wait, sorry, my bad. Okay, too many displays. Sorry. So I get an error. Basic tic-tac-toe is not defined. So this one. So this room needs to be the same one. Previously, I've been using a different name, so I'll compile that one as well. Let me. Okay, you can see the log here on the server log right here. What happens on the server? Play. Okay, room has been created. The player has been joined, and now I'm actually waiting for the other player to join in. And my name is player underscore 613, and I'm in assigned X. So let me when I leave, right, immediately it says player left this room and room has been disposed inside this room. So let me take a quick build. Okay, room created, cool, player joined, and my name is 530, right? So I'll keep it here. I'll use the Unity as a different one. Okay, so right now I'm 0. This is the tricky part, right? I'm sending and spamming data to the server. It's going to say message received, and the player index is -1, and it's slot 0, not the current turn. That means it's not my turn to actually play. So even if I'm spamming data back to the server, right, it's not going to respond to it or actually process it. Here, this guy's turn, so I press X and process this. Oh man, okay. And X automatically reflects here. All right, so this is my turn now. 0. This guy turn. 0. Sorry, this guy's turn. Player 8-1. So I'm 8-1 is the winner, and the winner is announced here as well because I'm 530, right? So you can polish a much more this one. This is a much more crude example, but you can see what ends up happening right now. This is completely engine free. That means the entire logic actually ran on the server rather than on any of the client. So I can have an HTML file client or use any of the client that Colyseus right now offers, right? You can go to Colyseus and say clients. So I think it supports all of these clients. So I can use construct. So for the guys who or ICAT who famously use construct, right? You guys can use construct and Unity and play the same game. Okay, in one of the client can be Unity and the other client can be construct, and you can both join the same room and play the same game as long as the state is being synchronized. So that's the huge advantage that you get over in Node.js. Okay, I think my time is exactly up. I'll upload this code immediately. Till then, you guys can ask any more questions that you guys have so far. I'm sorry I went through blasted through the last part. If you have any integrate details, you guys can ask me right away. Can you share this project? Yes, I will.
Any doubts?
Any doubts, guys?
If you have no doubts, we can end the session here. before we end, I would like to share the feedback form with you to get to know the feedback of this session and those who are looking out for a particular topic in our upcoming session. Like you want in especially as a continuation of this multiplayer session also we can do it, or if you want anything more interesting sessions also, we are happy to have your sessions. So whole thing is to kindly get your exact feedback and exact requirements. That is the reason. So if you can guide us, yes, this IMSK community can help you to arrange a lot of interesting and more required sessions comparing to which is not irrelevant for your requirement. So because we are addressing all the problems and frequently used, used to see in a lot of your groups in Unity, Unreal, and a lot of developer groups. We had this query about multiplayer. That is the reason we are running this show, multiplayer topic. And in a lot of there are lined up in this month. There are 3 or 4 more sessions. Yes, Discord link is there. Yes, we will share the Discord link in the 1 second. We will share the Discord link in the description, so you can even join there. Feel free to open up and ask your queries. If not only Facebook, Discord, and everything we are sharing here in the chat. So feel free to join us. Oh, you can even try this. Here the link it is. Try this link if it is Discord expired. Okay. So feel free to join us, and the project links, everything will be shared in the Discord link, and feel free to join us in the Discord, and let's get connected there, and let's share our ideas there, and we use that platform in a better way to discuss with a lot of technical related stuff. So hereby we signing off. Oh, still the Discord link is expired. Try this link. Those who are facing the Discord link is expired, try the latest link which is provided by just now. And please follow us in the Facebook and other social media links, and get to know what are the latest upcoming sessions happening. And we are coming up with a lot of interesting events for the professionals, where with a good price amount of 1 lakh to 2 lakhs. So just join us, and we are looking forward to everyone to use this platform to share this information. And if you do, I think anyone be the winner, anyway, you would also have a chance of winning the 1 lakh or 2 lakh prize money. Please join in and explore, and that will give a widespread of the information which is required by the lot of established brands through this event. So come and join us, and looking forward for your support to make this IMSK community grow bigger and bigger. Thank you, Joshua, on behalf of IMSK, and thanks for your wonderful session. And great, and it was a very good session, and you made it wonderful and making more interactive and a more better way. I think a lot of people, those who don't know the other rounds other than the photon, I think they got a clear picture about the multiplayer. I think even
I hope they even got like 50% of what I was yapping about. I'll be more than happy, right? If you guys at least know what authoritative server is, and it can be used as an alternative, Node.js can be used as an alternative for a highly scalable games. And I think I have set you on the right path. And I think we can have much better discussions in Discord, like you said.
Definitely. Well, please feel free to join our Discord and open up your thoughts. Say what is your problem. Get resolved by a lot of experts available in that Discord channel, like Joshua, and a lot more experts are available there. They will be helping you to fix it up and clear all your queries there. Don't hesitate to join us. We are looking forward to have more multiplayer. Definitely we can have more multiplayer. Please fill up the feedback and just drop us a note. We will be doing everything there. Thank you so much.
By the way, where are we supposed to start this discussion? General.
You can have it in the general. So you can put it up there. So if you have put up all your queries in general, no problem.
Okay. You can ask queries here. Okay. I'll be available for the next say 15 minutes while I'm uploading the code there. I'll also put the slides as well. Okay.
That is I think that is more helpful. And the project link, the video, those who didn't follow any areas in a particular length, Don't worry, the video will be uploaded in the YouTube channel, and our YouTube channel link is also provided here. So if you want to cross check our earlier sessions, whatever we made, and it is also quite interesting for the artists and designers, and even for the Unreal. If you want to explore Unreal or Unity ball scripting, you can even come down there to cross check that. Yes, get to know more information from the about our earlier sessions. Here we dropping our on the YouTube channel, our links also. Feel free to join us and discuss. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Signing off from your today's session. Thank you so much. Thanks, Joshua.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have the
Bye.
discussion in
Bye.
Discord. I'll post the links there, guys.
Definitely.
Cool.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your support.